To proceed. So today, inshallah, we will talk about Khula. We will talk about termination of marriage that is prompted or started, instigated by the wife. And I don't know why Imam ibn Qudamah put this before talaq. It comes right after the chapter on qasm al-nushuz. It comes right after the chapter on Ishra and then the chapter on qasm al-nushuz. So as if he's saying, well, if that doesn't work out. The chapter on Ishra is basically companionship, and it means proper treatment of the spouse or proper companionship. And the chapter on qasm al-nushuz is about division if there are co-wives, and contempt, which is nushuz or rebellion. And he probably wanted to say, if nothing worked out, then let's move on to Khula. So the chapter on Khula, termination of marriage prompted by the wife, Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah, who died in the year 620 after Hijrah, said in his book al-Umdat, which is a manual of Hanbali Fiqh, وإذا كانت المرأة مبغضة للرجل وخافت ألا تقيم حدود الله في طاعته فلها أن تفتدي نفسها منه بما تراضيا عليه. If the woman hates her husband and she fears that she may not be able to honor the injunctions of Allah, or to stay within the limits of Allah, تقيم حدود الله, to honor the injunctions of Allah, basically, but if you want a more literal translation, it would be more to stay within the limits of Allah. Concerning obedience to Him, she may ransom herself from that relationship, I added, by whatever they both agree on. By whatever they both agree on. إلا يخاف ألا يقيم حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيم حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيما افتدت به. Unless you fear that they will not establish or stay within the bounds of Allah, and if you fear that they will not stay within the bounds of Allah, then there is no blame on either one of them concerning that which she will ransom herself with. Concerning that which she would ransom herself with. So the idea of Khula is an ingenious legislation by Islam, because as we said before, and keep in mind to put things in context, in the past, the women did not have a way out of marriage. Like if you compare Islam to Christianity, for instance, men and women did not have a way out of a failed marriage, according to Christianity, except in very, very limited cases. But they did not have a way out of marriage, whether you were Catholic or Orthodox, maybe Orthodox a little bit, more flexible, but also extremely limited cases that will allow you to get out of a failed relationship. But in Islam recognized the importance of the permanency of this relationship. It is a permanent relationship, and Islam really recognized this. The hadith of Iblis, the hadith that's reported by Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ talked about Iblis dispatching his troops every day in the morning, and the one that will be brought closest to him, because he would be the most accomplished of his troops, is the one who will separate between a man and his wife, or between two spouses. So this hadith is actually a proof on the position of the Hanafis that was also chosen by Ibn Taymiyyah, that al-asl fi talaq al-hadhr, that the default concerning talaq is prohibition, not permissibility. Prohibition, not permissibility, because of the great darar, the great harm. Because in this hadith, if talaq really is one of the highest objectives of the shayateen, then it must not be something that is only detested. And certainly, أبغض الحلال عند الله الطلاق, the most hated halal, permissible thing in the sight of Allah is talaq. Whether, it is not authentically traceable to the Prophet ﷺ, according to the stronger position among the muhaddithin, but it is true to a great extent in certain cases where there is some reason behind it, some reason to warrant divorce. We are still saying it is permissible. We're not saying that divorce is haram, but divorce without any justification is pure harm. If there is no justification, then al-asl fihi al-hadr. And the reason why I wanted to start by this is to tell you that when we talk about, limiting or restricting that concept of khula and reminding women of the evil of breaking down the family, we're not just saying this to women, we're also saying this to men. Termination of marriage that is unwarranted is unwarranted and should not, and the default in this should be prohibition, not permissibility. So Khula then is the legislation of Khula then was introduced because women do not have the power to divorce their spouses. They don't have the power to divorce their spouses. If he gave her that power, and then according to the Hanbalis, if he gives her that power, she will have that power, she will own that power. According to the Hanafis also, there are certain, if she demands this in her prenuptial agreement and he agrees to it, but in general, women do not have the power to initiate divorce. And it makes perfect sense because why does it make perfect sense? Because men are responsible for the expenses of marriage and divorce, the burdens, the liabilities, financial liabilities of marriage and divorce. And that may deter many of them from taking the sort of an unwarranted step towards the dissolution of the marriage. If they are responsible for building the nest and responsible for, liable for everything that will arise from taking apart or tearing apart that nest, then they have the power to make that decision. And it was made easy because a termination of a failed relationship should be easy. Nowadays you hear a lot about trying to restrict it, trying to limit it. You hear a lot in Egypt, for instance, about the president of Egypt wants to restrict divorce and just like put some impediments to slow down the people or hinder the people from making divorce. And this is one of the disagreements between him and Sheikh al-Azhar, because Sheikh al-Azhar believes that a verbal divorce is a valid divorce, and he wants divorce to be only actualized through the court. The divorce that has been sort of processed by the court is the only divorce that would count. So anyway, Islam did make divorce easy for the man, because Islam put a lot of liabilities on the man. To start the marriage, is responsible for the expenses, and then also to divorce, he would be responsible for maintenance, he would be responsible for the maintenance of his children until they grow up, and responsible for the maintenance of his wife during the idda time. He's responsible for mut'ah. He's responsible for ajr al-hadina, for compensation for his wife if she will be taking care of his children until his children grow up. It is very complex. It's not easy. It is complicated. So he will be sustaining a household that he does not, live in. The fact that he moved out, the fact that he separated, it does not really relieve him from all the financial liabilities or for all their financial responsibilities. So it is expected that he will, think about it several times before he makes that the decision. And if some people are not, then that is basically their fault, their problem. But then they will be liable for everything that will ensue from this divorce. Now, for the wife, she was not given the power to divorce her husband. As we said, if he gives her that power, then she can have it. And according to the Hanbalis, according to the Hanafis and Hanbalis, and certainly in different rulings, the Hanbalis are talking about someone who's married, who gives his wife that right, and the Hanafis are talking about it being in the prenuptial agreements, conditions, the shurut al-nikah. So, but she's not going to be she's not by default of the shara capable of initiating divorce. Is she capable of getting a divorce? She is capable of getting a court-ordered divorce, and there are 10 different reasons. I will mention the most important ones in the Hanbalis, according to the Hanbalis, but if you want a more elaborate elaborate discussion of this, go to Sheikh Wahb al-Zuhayli's book, al-Fiqh al-Islami wa adillatuhu. He has a very elaborate discussion of the 10 different reasons of a court-ordered divorce, in the different madhahib. In the Hanbali madhab, there are 4 big ones that we usually mention. Unexcused absence of the husband, al-ghaiba, al-i'sar, inability to maintain, sustain, unable to sustain, unexcused absence, the defects that would warrant defects warranting fasq, warranting annulment. If they happen after the marriage, they would warrant a court-ordered divorce. So the defects that would warrant annulment, if they happened before the marriage, they would give the wife the right to annulment, fasq, if she did not know about them, and he had some defects. Certainly, we talked about the different defects when we talked about that chapter. But if they arise after the marriage, then these same defects will give her the right to a court-ordered divorce. And the last one is ila. If he takes that oath of abandonment and does not recant it after 4 months, she is entitled to divorce. These are the 4 big ones. And the talaq lid-darar, the concept of talaq lid-darar, talaq because of harm, when they say that the Malikis only are the ones who sanction a talaq lid-darar, that is not true, because all of this is darar. These are different types of darar. What the Malikis explicitly talk about is talaq because of, or tatliq, or court-ordered divorce, because of verbal or physical abuse. Verbal or physical abuse. So the Malikis are the ones who explicitly talk about the right to talaq because of verbal or physical abuse. Does this mean that the Hanbalis with verbal and physical abuse will not give the wife a court-ordered divorce? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that it will make this up to the arbitrators that are hired by the court. It does not make it like it does not make it a given that there will be divorce. It will leave it to the assessment of the arbitrators that will be hired by the court. فَبَعْثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. The 2 arbitrators that will preside over this session are the ones who will determine if she would get divorced or not because of his physical or verbal abuse. Okay, but the Malikis are the ones who explicitly talked about this issue. Now, if she fails to get, so we said that she does not have the right to divorce until he gives her that right, or it's in the prenuptial agreement according to the Hanafis, but then she does have the right to a court-ordered divorce, and if she fails to prove anything to the court, or she doesn't actually have anything that's substantive that will make the court order divorce, then does she have any way out of this marriage? Let us say that she is still kariha, that she still hates to be in this marriage. Does she have any way out of this marriage? Well, she does, which, and that is Khula. That is Khula. The ruling of Khula then, the Hanbalis, for instance, say, according to the Mu'tamad and the Hanbali madhab, they say that Khula is makruh if basically the relationship between the two spouses is good, then Khula is makruh, only disliked. But there is no way that what the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith would just mean only makruh. أيما امرأة سألت زوجها الطلاق من غير بأس فحرام عليها رائحة الجنة. So أيما امرأة سألت زوجها الطلاق من غير بأس فحرام عليها رائحة الجنة. So any woman who asks, Sa'alat would be asked her husband divorce min ghayri ba'sin, without harm, فَحَرَامٌ عَلَيْهَا, then haram to her is the fragrance of paradise. Fragrance, رائحة al-Jannah, paradise. So haram to her is the fragrance of paradise. So she will be deprived of the fragrance of paradise. Well, I think it's a very strong language. And that is not language that the Prophet ﷺ would use with makruh only. So what we can say here to reconcile between the Hanbalis making this makruh, because the Hanbalis, they cite this, but they also cite that فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ, or فَإِنْ تَبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ نَفْسًا فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. So if they, wholeheartedly, or they give you this with ease or something, give you your dowry back, your sadaq back with ease, then you may consume it. فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ, then there is no blame on either one of them concerning that with which she ransoms herself. So they use this to balance out the prohibition here and say that it actually means makruh. But you may say that this hadith is talking about a woman who does not even have any resentment, any dislike of the husband, who's just asking for divorce because she wants to be free. But not only that the husband is wonderful, because this khula basically is hinging on one important hadith. The whole ruling is hinging on this hadith of Thabit ibn Qais and Jamila, the wife of Thabit ibn Qais, when she came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said to the Prophet ﷺ, إِنِّي لَا أَعِيبُ عَلَى ثَابِتٍ في خلق ولا دين ولكني أكره الكفر في الإسلام قال أتردين عليه حديقته قالت نعم قال خذ حديقتك وطلقها تطليقا. So this hadith of the Jamila who came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him that I don't find any fault in Thabit ibn Qais. Okay, just not going to write it. I don't find any fault in Thabit ibn Qais concerning his deen, religious commitment, or khuluq, his manners. So a wonderful husband, you know how many women can actually say, I don't find any problem with my husband concerning his religious commitment and concerning his manners. So a wonderful husband. ولكني أكره الكفر في الإسلام, but I hate to be ungrateful after becoming Muslim. I hate to be ungrateful towards my Lord and towards His creation. So then the Prophet ﷺ, so she indicated what by saying that I hate to be ungrateful? She indicated what? That she is unhappy. It is not like there is no reason whatsoever. The man is wonderful, but she is unhappy. And she must have had her reasons why she is unhappy with that man. So that's sort of the psychological factor that Islam does respect in this case. Would make this hadith not apply to her. Because it is impossible that the Prophet ﷺ would say to her, will you give him his orchard back? And then she says yes, and then the Prophet ﷺ would order Thabit ibn Qais, take back your orchard, which was his sadaq, his dowry, to her, and give her one divorce. Give her a divorce. And that is a ba'in divorce, a finalized divorce, as we will come to see. So it is impossible that the Prophet ﷺ would not even exhort her, would not do anything if she is committing this haram. So what Jamila said to the Prophet ﷺ made the Prophet ﷺ feel that the man is a wonderful man, but she still has her reasons to get a divorce. That is where this would apply. That is where this does not apply. But in the case that she does not even have reasons, psychological reasons, the man is wonderful and she is happy in the marriage. She is happy in the marriage. This is when this hadith would apply. Okay, so you have different layers here. You have a man who's not a good man, but she cannot get a court-ordered divorce. A man who is not a good man, she cannot get a court-ordered divorce, whether because she does not prove it or because he is, like subclinically evil. So like he's, he can't catch like one evil act that would warrant a court-ordered divorce, but he's chronically and subclinically evil. Like he has this tone of evil that he just holds on all the time, but she can't really prove anything before the court. So that is one scenario. One scenario. The other scenario is the wonderful man and unhappy wife. At the Thabit ibn Qais scenario, wonderful man, unhappy wife. And then you have a third scenario, wonderful man and a happy wife. This hadith will apply to the third scenario. Wonderful man, happy wife, she's still asking for divorce. She's still asking for divorce for whatever reason, that she may want to be free, she may want to travel, she may want to just like do whatever she wants to do, like she just, But this hadith applies to the wonderful man and happy wife. Wonderful man, happy wife. Wonderful man, unhappy wife, then you could say it is makruh. Then you could say it's makruh. A wonderful man, the relationship, the dynamics also are fine. The dynamics are fine. But she is still an unhappy wife. You could say then it is makruh. And certainly if If the man is not a wonderful man and she has reasons, but she cannot get a court-ordered divorce, then it would be halal, it would be permissible for her to get khula. So khula is not really straightforward, it is not all the same thing, but if you want to have like a three-pronged classification of the rulings of khula, then we will have three different scenarios. A bad man, she can't get a court-ordered divorce. A wonderful man and unhappy wife, a wonderful man and a happy wife. It would be most prohibited if this is in the third type, wonderful man, happy wife. Okay, so that is as far as the ruling of khula is concerned. Because khula would be initiated by the wife. Is it halal for her to initiate it? Then we have, yes, halal, if it is warranted, justified, the man's behavior is just not agreeable at all. Makruh, if the conditions are fine, but she is still unhappy. Haram, if conditions are fine, marital relationship is fine, and she is happy. But she still wants khula, then that would be haram. Okay, and that is why you find this sort of different riwayat from Imam Ahmad, the one riwayat that says makruh and the one riwayat from Imam Ahmad himself that says haram about khula. You will need to contextualize this. You will need to apply the different riwayat, because not always that Imam Ahmad, it is like some other the proof appear to him. It is when Imam Ahmad changes his position, it is not always a change of position. We really need to be fair to him as well. It is not always because of a new sort of discovery no. Sometimes he would say, just like everybody else, depending on the context. So you need to contextualize the different reports from the Imam, and this is my way of understanding the different reports from the Imam. Rahimahullah ta'ala. So the Sheikh says here, وإذا كانت المرأة مبغضة للرجل وخافت ألا تقيم حدود الله في طاعته فلها أن تفتدي نفسها منه بما تراضي عليه. If the woman hates her husband and she fears that she may not be able to honor the injunctions of Allah concerning obedience to Him, she may ransom herself from that relationship by whatever they both agree on. Then the Sheikh said, وَيُسْتَحَبُّ أَلَّا يَأْخُذَ مِنْهَا أَكْثَرَ مِمَّا أَعْطَاهَا. It is recommended that he take no more than what he initially gave her. And it is recommended that he take no more than what he initially gave her. Now, is this recommendation or obligation? Well, according to the majority, it is a recommendation, and that is the authorized position in the Hanbali madhab. It is only a recommendation. What does that mean? He can negotiate with her for more. He can ask for more to give her khula. Who said that he cannot ask for more to give her khula? Among the later Imams, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said that he cannot ask for more. He's only entitled to her to take back his dowry, because in one addition in a ziyada as traceable to the Prophet ﷺ, reported by Ibn Majah, فأمره أن يطلقها فأن يأخذ حديقته وأن يطلقها ويأخذ حديقته ولا يزداد. So he commanded him to divorce her, to take back his orchard ولا يزداد, and to not ask for more, or to not take more. So this would be clear if we agree that this is traceable to the Prophet ﷺ, then this would be clear that a man cannot ask for more than the dowry that he gave the wife to give her khula. But why is it that he can ask for more according to the majority? Because the majority do not consider khula to be the right of the woman. Don't give her that. Don't make it obligatory on the man. It is only Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah who makes it obligatory on the man. So it would make sense for him to say that he cannot take more than his dowry, because khula to him is a right given to the woman that is obligatory on the man. For the majority, it is not. It is not. For the majority, it is up to the man at the end of the day. So she will offer money, or she will, and if it is up to him, and she says, take back your dowry, if it is up to him, can he say, I will take back my dowry and 10,000 more? Yes. I mean, that does not mean, keep in mind that the Imam, like Imam Hanifa, would not himself do this to his wife, of course. But he's just looking at it from a legal perspective, not from what he would recommend to his son or what, no, absolutely not. He's just looking at it from a legal perspective. If that is not her right, if it is up to him, can he ask for more? Well, he says yes, if he can ask for more. فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. Then there is no blame on either one of them concerning that with which she ransoms herself. افتدت به is not designated here in this ayah. It is absolute, then whatever she offers or whatever he accepts in terms of the offer. Would it be befitting of any man of high moral standard to ask his wife for more than khula, or to blackmail his wife for divorce? Absolutely not. Actually, a man of high moral standard would give her a divorce and not a khula to begin with. Would just give her a divorce and let her keep her dowry and everything. But anyway, so the idea here is, you have to differentiate between the law, that is the bones, and the sort of the ethical or the demands of the Sharia that are beyond the law. There are demands that are beyond the law, because this Sharia is not only about wajib and haram, it is also about mustahab and makruh. It is also about awla and khilaf al-awla, that which is closer, that which is more befitting, favorable, unfavorable. So there are different layers here, and that is important to understand, because Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Shafi'i would have never blackmailed their wives to get more out of them. The fact that they said it is permissible, it is basically from a legal perspective, because they don't consider this to be her right, they consider this to be his right, and if he would not give her the khula except if she paid him more, then they don't find this to be problematic from a legal perspective. So it is recommended that he take no more than what he initially gave her, and as we said, according to Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, it is not permissible for him to take more than what he gave her. He makes it obligatory on the husband to give her a khula once she offers to give him back his sadaq. فإذا خلعها أو طلقها بعوض بانت منه ولم يلحقها طلاقه بعد ذلك. Of course, the position of Ibn Taymiyyah is the position that the legislatures in some Muslim countries uphold now, like in Egypt, for instance. فإذا خلعها أو طلقها بعوض بانت منه ولم يلحقها طلاقه بعد ذلك وإن واجهها به. If he gives her khula or divorces her in exchange for compensation, her divorce is immediately finalized, and she is not subject to more divorces from him, even if he says that to her in her face. In her face. So if he gives her khula or divorces her in exchange for compensation, keep in mind that if he gives her khula or divorces her in exchange for compensation, her divorce is immediately finalized, and she is not subject to more divorces from him, even if he says that to her in her face. So the consequences of khula, whether this is khula or talaq in exchange for compensation, whether this is khula or talaq in exchange for compensation, according to all of them, is this finalized or unfinalized? Finalized. This is talaq ba'in according to all of them, whether it is khula or talaq in return for compensation. But there is a difference between the two. Khula, and even in the Hanbali madhab, there is a difference between khula and talaq for compensation. Khula has to be conducted in the explicit terminology for khula. أبرأت or فديتك or خلعتك, the explicit terminology of khula. But if she offers him money and then he divorces her, is this khula? It is talaq in return for compensation. It is not khula, even though in reality it is just like khula, right? She offers him the sadaq, he tells her you're divorced. That looks like khula, exactly. But that is not a khula, that is called talaq in return for compensation, talaq bi'iwad, or talaq in return for compensation. How is this different, particularly in the Hanbali madhab? If it is khula in the Hanbali madhab, then according to the mu'tamad, the authorized position in the madhab, it is considered the fasq and not talaq. If it is talaq for in return for compensation, it is considered talaq. So if it does not, if it doesn't happen in the exact explicit terminology of khula, then it is not fasq, it is not annulment, it is talaq. Even if he gave her khula with the intention of talaq, it is talaq. So khula is when he gave her a khula with the niyyah of khula and the explicit terminology of khula. And the explicit terminology of khula. Only then it is fasq. But according to the majority, it is still talaq. How is it different between the Hanbalis and the majority then? So we are saying here that the default is that it is talaq, except if he gave her khula in the explicit terminology of khula and with the niyyah of khula, then it is khula. And if it is khula, that one exception where it is actually khula, the Hanbalis are different from the majority in this case, and these differences could be huge, could have huge consequences. Huge consequences. One of the two differences is her waiting period. What is her waiting period if it is annulment? It is 1 period. It's not the regular waiting period for someone like her. It is just 1 period to make sure tastabri al-rahim, to make sure that there is no pregnancy. The other difference here between being fasq and being talaq is what? The number of divorces. The number of divorces. This will not take away from the 3 divorces that he is entitled to. So if we have talaq, khul, talaq. Okay, wait a second. If we have talaq, khul, talaq, can they go back to each other? Talaq, khul, talaq. They can go back to each other. Had this been a talaq, they would have not been able to. Talaq, talaq, talaq would have not been able to. Talaq, khul, talaq, they would be able to go back to each other. According to whom? The Hanbalis. According to the Hanbalis. Talaq ba'in does not mean baynuna kubra. Talaq ba'in is 2 different types of talaq. Talaq ba'in is called finalized divorce. And we will come back to it, but we went over it 2 years ago.
The same thing, he has to come and and do all this thing.
Talaq ba'in means he does not have the right to return her, to take her back. You know, the talaq ba'in means he does not have the right to take her back. In order for him to take her back, he would have to propose and pay, you know, the dowry and all of that stuff. But that's what talaq ba'in means. Talaq ba'in baynuna sughra and baynuna kubra. Talaq ba'in is two different types: finalized with recourse, finalized without recourse. Finalized with recourse, baynuna sughra. This is what we're talking about here. Talaq ba'in baynuna kubra, finalized without recourse. Talaq ba'in baynuna kubra, finalized without recourse, has to be what? 3 divorces or li'an, public imprecation. You know, if he accuses her of adultery and they go through public imprecation, then it is one, but it is immediate, finalized, and without recourse. Okay, so, but here it is finalized, the divorce with recourse. They can go back to each other, but they can go back to each other upon what? Mutual agreement. The difference between the ba'in and raj'i is what? In the talaq raj'i, unfinalized divorce, the husband has the right to take her back. And that means what? Regardless of what she thinks. But in the talaq, in the ba'in, he would have to basically propose and wait for her answer. So these are different. These are some differences. These are some differences. So if someone, you know, when we like in the past, they used to make a trick. Like if someone will, for instance, say to his wife, if you like, someone has 2 divorces, has divorced his wife twice. And he says to his wife, if you go to this town, or like you are divorced, that is talaq mu'allaq. That is hinging on, you know, a condition. And if the condition is met, the talaq takes place. So one of the tricks that can be employed here is for her to ask for khula, and then he grants her khula, and then she can basically go out, go wherever she needs to go, and then when she comes back, he takes her back. It doesn't count as a divorce. But the Hanbalis made sure that they would say that this would not be valid and all of that stuff. But that is one of the tricks that could have been applied. And not all the Hanbalis consider it invalid, by the way. Some would consider it to be a valid trick. Because, you know, al-hiyal al-mashru'a, valid basically tricks is a completely different story that we can talk about some other day. What makes a hiyal mashru'a or not. If it does not defeat the purpose of the legislation, then it is mashru'a. But anyway, that is the difference between khula and talaq. 2 major consequences: the period, the duration of the period, and the number of divorces. Now, that is given that khula took place in the proper khula sort of terminology with the niyyah of khula. Otherwise, if it is not, it counts as talaq, and if it counts as talaq, then it is just like talaq. In both cases, if it is khula or talaq in return for compensation, in both cases it is finalized. That means finalized. That means he cannot take her back except with her approval. Okay. Now, did we say that khula is not the right of the wife, right? According to the majority. It is only Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah who said that it is obligatory on the man once she gives him the dowry to give her a khula. But the majority consider this to not be an obligation on the man. Does the majority then mean that she has no way out if he's refusing. No, according to the Malikis and Hanbalis, it will be up to the two arbitrators who can force him to give her khula. But they will not, basically, the difference between the Malikis and Hanbalis, the authorized view according to the Malikis and Hanbalis, is that they will leave this determination up to the arbitrators, and then the arbitrators will force him to give her khula. Ibn Taymiyyah makes this obligation a divine one. He has already been commanded. It is not pending the arbitrators' decision or decree. But according to the Malikis and Hanbalis, the arbitrators will be able to force khula on him. The arbitrators will be able, so if the arbitrators found that she's actually hateful or resentful or unable to proceed in this marriage, then they will force him to accept khula. Then the Sheikh said, وَيَجُوزُ الْخُلْعُ بِكُلِّ مَا يَجُوزُ أَنْ يَكُونَ صَدَاقًا وَبِالْمَجْهُولِ فَلَوْ قَالَتْ اخْلَعْنِي بِمَا فِي يَدِي مِنَ الدَّرَاهِمْ أَوْ مَا فِي بَيْتِي مِنَ الْمَتَاعِ فَفَعَلَ صح وله ما فيهما فإن لم يكن فيهما شيء فله 3 دراهم وأقل ما يسمى متاعا. The compensation for khula is anything that could be a sadaq, even if it is unknown. If she says, give me a khula in exchange for the dirhams in my hand or for the useful properties in my house, and he does, it is valid, and he is entitled to whatever is there. If nothing is there, he is entitled to 3 dirhams in this first scenario, or the smallest article that could be considered useful property in the second scenario. Well, this is according to the authorized view in the Hanbali madhab. In the unauthorized view of the Hanbali madhab, that does not apply. The khula has to be known. This level of gharar or undue risk-taking is not acceptable in khula. Is not acceptable in khula, because they consider this to be like other uqud. So in the for-profit transactions, uqud al-muawadat, is this level of gharar acceptable? Is this level of risk-taking acceptable? Of course not. Yeah, well, that is what the Hanbalis said. The Hanbalis said that he may, that this is his right to give a divorce. So if he's accepting anything, it is not, it's not a problem. But in general, in uqud al-muawadat, for-profit transactions, this level of risk-taking is unacceptable. You cannot say, give me your laptop for the darahim in my hand. Can you say that? No, it's not acceptable. But give me khula for the darahim in my hand, it is acceptable if he agrees to give her khula for darahim in her hand. Well, if she opens her hand and there is nothing, then he is entitled to 3 dirhams, because that is the least that could be called darahim, plural of dirham. So he's entitled to 3 dirhams. If she says, give me khula for the furniture in my home, and then he goes back and does not find any furniture, then he is entitled for the least article that may be considered furniture, that may be called furniture. Things of that nature. Anyway, it's not a big deal. But, then the Sheikh said, have we skipped anything? Because, huh? No, we did not skip anything that needed to be discussed before. Okay, you have the. Then the Sheikh said, وَيَصِحُّ الْخُلْعُ مِنْ كُلِّ مَنْ يَصِحُّ طَلَاقُهُ وَلَا يَصِحُّ بَذْلُ الْعِوَضِ إِلَّا مِمَّنْ يَصِحُّ تَصَرُّفُهُ فِي الْمَالِ. Khula is valid from anyone whose talaq is valid. The payment of its compensation is valid only from one who is legally competent to conduct monetary transactions. So who can give a khula? Who can make khula? يصح الخلع من كل من يصح طلاقه. Khula is valid from anyone whose talaq is valid. So if someone whose talaq is invalid, like the majnoon for instance, like the child for instance, and you want to add this to your thing because I have here the child. I should have said the non-discerning child because according to the Hanbalis, the discerning child can initiate divorce and khula. So the child husband that I have here in the footnotes, I meant by this the non-discerning child. Why? Because الطفل المميز, the discerning child's divorce and khula are acceptable according to the Hanbalis. Is this true for the majority? No, it is not true for the majority. The majority will not give the child the right to divorce or the capacity to divorce. It is only the Hanbalis that will give it to the discerning child. But anyway, according to the insane or to the non-discerning child, the insane and the non-discerning child will not have the capacity to divorce. Therefore, they do not have the capacity to give khula. Is this capacity transferable to their wali, to their guardian? The Malikis and the Hanbalis said that this capacity is transferable to their guardian, to their wali. The Hanafis and the Shafi'is and the other report also according to the Hanbalis that is, pretty strong, say that this is not transferable to the wali, not transferable to the wali. But it would be like they would be locked into this, so it's probably transferable to the wali, and the wali will do what is in the best interest of their whoever is under their custody or under their wilaya, protege or whatever you call this, ward, I guess. Now the second issue here, so and if you are surprised, yes, two children could be married to each other, or a child could be married to an adult, because Islam does not, all of this stuff is left in the sort of this area of permissibility. It does not mean that anyone is telling you to marry off your 2-year-old son to a 60-year-old woman. Is that allowable? Yes, it is. So if your 2-year-old son is married to a 60-year-old woman, can he divorce her? No, he cannot. Is his wali able to divorce her according to the sort of the different positions that I told you? He may or may not, based on. If she offers khula, can he give her a khula, the 2-year-old? No, he cannot. Can his wali give her a khula? Depending on the disagreement that I just cited here. Does this mean that Allah is telling you to marry off your 2-year-old son to a 60-year-old woman? No, He's not. He just did not put restrictions there. And that's it. Well, use your discretion, use your whatever. Just do whatever is in your son's best interest. Can the authorities restrict that mubah if they found that it is being abused? As we said before, according to many contemporary scholars, the authorities could restrict the mubah if they found that it is being abused. It is simply that Allah did not put restrictions there. Can the authorities do this if the restrictions will be in the best interest of the public? According to many contemporary scholars, the authorities could actually do this. It is part of the power of the Sultan. Okay, so now your 2-year-old son who's married to the 60-year-old lady, let us say that it is the opposite. So the child here is the spouse that is asking for, not the exact opposite, but whatever it is. It could be like an 8-year-old girl married to like a 9-year-old boy. So let us say that this is let's say in the first example we were talking about the capacity to initiate divorce, or the capacity to give khula, to grant khula. Flip it. Does that child or the insane have the capacity to demand khula? And because demanding anything, no one needs. It is always in the best interest to get what you want, right? But she will also have to pay for this. She will have to return the sadaq at least to get the khula. Does she have that capacity if she is mahjur alayha? And this Hajj interdicted, and this interdiction is because of one of two reasons: insanity or young age. If there is interdiction, can she dispose of her property? No. So can her wali do that? Can her guardian do that? According to the majority, including the authorized view in the Hanbali madhab. Yes, according to one view in the Hanbali madhab, the Malikis, and Ibn Taymiyyah's choice, rahimahullah ta'ala. So they said yes. If that is in her best interest, he can offer her property in return for this khula, if that was in her best interest. And I want you to, the mubah that we are talking about here, that was not restricted by Allah, is what? The contract, not the consummation. Because the consummation has to be deferred until they are capable, until she is capable of sort of marriage and the obligations of marriage. But the mubah that is unrestricted is the age where the contract can be conducted, and in the Sharia there is no lower age. There is no cutoff for this age. No higher, no low. There are no cutoffs. There are no age cutoffs for the contract of marriage. Anyone can get married at any time. That will bring us to the end. Just make sure that I have not skipped. I thought there would be more. Like I did cover everything. Okay. Well, actually, we finished in just 1 hour. That's good. I have it written here. No, I don't have it written. I'm just telling you that it has to be explicit. The khula has to be explicit. If it is not explicit, what happens if it is not explicit? It would count as talaq. If it is not explicit, it will count as talaq. And if it counts as talaq, what does that mean? The period is just, the rating period is the regular period for talaq, and it will count as one talaq, 1 out of 3 that they are entitled to. That's it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We'll take 5 minutes for people to leave, and then we'll start our Q&A session. Explicit? What happened to Sharon? He lost his voice?
Yeah.
Oh.
He lost his voice, but he's saying the explicit words used for the khula.
بريت فاديت and خلعت. خلعت بريت فاديت. Yes. سبحان الله.